Immigration. No preparation for a rather confused nation. Now, Starmer's speech this morning. 8 in the morning, flipping hell. No warning, right to the point. Now, I am one of these people who are the ultimate sockless liberal. Now, I shan't use the N word. The only man I've loved in my, no, actually near the second, in my whole life, he spent 2 years trying to get me to querulous rejoined him with his N word. I'm not one of them lovers, but I loved him because I always forget, first generation immigrant, I suppose that means born here, if not second generation. The most intelligent and beautifully poetic communicator I've ever met in any Englishman. So yes, I'm one of the problems, but let's go back further. From the age of 18, I recognise no border. It just so happens that I happened to bob around as a professional pilot. Small charter planes, not well paid. But borders didn't really exist for people like me. Good for me. Anyway, see, I'm one of the problems. 1997, rather despairing of anything born and bred, I simply decided I'm going to take up with the first one I encounter, whichever other country I lay my head. Now, it just so happened to be Poland. Quite random. So I imported my then lover, girlfriend, and stayed beyond 6 months. Had to get married. To the point. I only have one person I consider my family. In fact, she so damaged by a man from Italy arrives here, I don't know, 1983. Bit of a drug dealer at first, nothing to do with me. And what's my point? My point is, I'm one of these people who, not wealthy, but I don't really even think of what country somebody may be from. The only person I think of what country they're from is me. I can't get my bloody red passport back. Pity me. But years, all my life, as a green politics 30 years ago meant internationalist, environmentally precautionary, tending towards egalitarianism, and considering of international human rights. But I know full well the reality of humanity moving around this globe. But You see, I know few truly wonderful, honest speakers, and the best one of all is bizarrely from this otherwise rather lost county. She recently, a few months ago, has taken up with a once Iranian emigre, apostate, chucked away his Islam. A Christian I shall be. Anyway, to the point. Now her relationship is very important to her, and honestly, she shared with me him. He's quite honest about all his mates. They came here only for money. Now me, I'm pretty aware of... Well, you see, I'm aware that tonight Jonathan Pye will be preparing yet another explosive load of... He makes out that he has this kind of alter ego persona, which is his performance. But you see, it's not really. He's been doing it so long, and with his like a million hits a waffle. But it's the problem. Let me try and help you through the borderline between him and me and reality. His reality. Reality is it's completely impossible to weed out, or rather it's the other way around, to find the genuine refugee amongst many a thousand. I mean, the reason I came down to this Navy stronghold, we'll get to that in a moment, is because of somebody. Was she? Is that the heron? The heron is the only, to me, slightly... Who knows if the other worlds do speak through some animal. I don't even believe in other worlds. I don't know why I've just said that. Anyway, to try and get to the point. What is a refugee? Yeah. But one thing that's for certain, 30 years ago, those who for one reason or another had to move around the world or leave their homeland, they'd do it in a hurry. They wouldn't really even know where they were going, most of them. And they certainly wouldn't know the angles, the rules, the Well, the biggest con in the English language is the word loophole. Because there aren't really any loopholes. There are just areas of law, the rules, the regulations. I think Britain, much more so than most other countries in the European region, our civil servants are at it day and night, redesigning the rule book. Europeans are far too, well, they actually have lives, so they do that as little as possible. Anyway, our lot, continually changing the rules, changing the law. And all a loophole is finding a way, a legal way, to use the law to your advantage, or rather to act in a way that is lawfully, which the creator of the law may have neglected or omitted to to cover that eventuality, your eventuality. That's all a loophole is, or your reality. Anyway, there will always be. It is impossible to design a system, impossible, that's going to weed out the genuinely persecuted person from the. Sorry, well, it's not sorry. I know for a fact. Just as my own partner then, 5 years before the Poland was let into the European Union. In fact, I think it was even earlier. Before then, because the Poles were restricted, or rather, there were 7 or 8 European countries which had a temporary 7 or 8 year restriction. They couldn't work here, so it wasn't a loophole. It was just the way somebody from that place could come here, and in my own defence, I say only one thing, because I already knew what I. Yeah, this is the day when on the news it's announced that, yes, see my blog written today, but it's not a blog, it's just years of stuff that I've known forever. And, there isn't even a government response to, seems that special forces from most of our military, all various divisions, committed really horrible war crimes in Afghanistan, as they have done in other places, and are probably still doing today. To the point. Working out who needs to be given genuine sanctuary is always going to be almost impossible, with the best will in the world, because nowadays even the other half of the DNA of my beloved half-breed child, arguably an economic migrant of sorts. They weren't really. I don't think they were. I actually say to people, yeah, so when she came over here, I don't even remember us actually having to fill out a form. I'm sure she had to fill out 1 page, but it's like, okay, you've come. I certainly didn't have to fill out anything saying that I've got this kind of money or can support her or anything like that. No, you come here, you've ended up getting married, okay, you get your residence permit, that's that. But that has entirely changed due to your Mr. Farage. But here's the point, right. All my life, I have been a sockless liberal, entirely, 100% in favour of the most open of borders. Now, please note, though, it's so hard to have a flow tying together the most fundamental realities, that if some equally well-informed person from some other territory, i.e. country, were looking at the genuine facts and figures and etc., etc., what is their viewpoint going to be? Now, a few days ago or a few weeks ago, you had Stuart Lee, who's kind of the thinking man's, or supposed thinking man's, comedian, talking about the fact that he wouldn't go to America. Now, the first thing he says is, oh, they've just summarily, without any kind of trial or without any kind of investigation, sent somebody straight into an El Salvador prison. Oh my gosh, Stuart, you're such a hero to keep reminding us of this one moment. There's nothing about Trump that in any way I like. However, if you Google now indeterminate sentences, which were outlawed from 2012, the European Court of Human Rights, more or less around the same time, in fact I think it was before then, judged them to be against fundamental human rights. Cruel. Just as anything Saddam might have done. Just as anything Assad might have done. An intolerable, inhuman way of treating people. There are still today, in fact, if you look up the Prison Reform Trust, the byline is something like thousands of people are today in prison, not for what they have done, but to what it's thought they may do. But for what it's thought they may do in the future. That's against fundamental... I don't think they even have that in America. Now, what's my point? So this smug git Stuart Lee, righty-ho, somebody's sent to El Salvador. Now, anyone knows who knows a little bit about the justice system in Britain that the sentences have massively increased and that the conditions are regularly judged to be against the basic conditions required by the Human Rights Act. If somebody fled to... If I went to America and outstayed my welcome, or just did a little bit of work, I would straight away be stuck on a plane. I'd be held in whatever conditions, their basic conditions they hold any unlawful entrant. Unlawful. It's as simple as that. I'm against all border law, but I would accept 100%. I've been collared for breaking the law. If I was on the run from... if somebody in Britain is on an... was given well, they're called IPP, indeterminate sentences, they're adjudged to be against people's human rights. And yet if you're somebody who received one of these sentences and it ends up that it ended up such that somebody who was like, the judge kind of said, well, if you're a naughty boy you're staying forever, but almost certainly if you get a bit of help in jail, if you get the courses, the therapy, minimum term 5 years or something like that. Now, they never got the courses, they never got the help. So there are many who were given those sentences 20 years ago, and they still have what's known as a kind of, even if they've been let out, they're still on license. If anything goes wrong in their life, like they don't go to the probation office, if they got on a plane and went to America and decided to stay there, they would actually be in breach of their license. So something that has been deemed unlawful in the highest courts that apply to this country and Parliament, nevertheless, they would still be subject to extradition straight back to jail on something which has been deemed by the highest courts in Europe as unlawful. Now, if you ask me, there isn't a hell of a lot of difference between that and Mr. Stuart Lee's smug El Salvador anti-America statement. But the same people will be making the same statements about immigration now. Oh, we're no. I'm not. Right. Here's the point. I'm going to try and make a point here. Now, I am, as a person, even more pro-immigration because immigration's been my life. I've had more significant others in my life who are not British passport holders, not British born and bred. countries, the notion of countries, nation, just actually makes me sick. I've dedicated myself to green politics for over 20 years. In fact, 22 or 23, 20 years ago. With my daughter, we were founder members of the Hay-on-Wye Friends of the Earth. There were only 5 of us. Green politics, internationalism, environmentalism, egalitarianism. There are the foundations of green politics. Unfortunately, it's all become a bit sick with the Green Party these days. Make it about some imaginary, most oppressed group to make them look good. They can't even accept the findings of the Supreme Court. Probably the most conclusive finding there's been for many years. Anyway. But I accepted something. I don't accept Brexit because we can go on forever saying that it was a bit dodgy. I don't actually accept Brexit because even in America, if there was a major in the House and the Senate and the I can't even remember what now. But the important to get a bill through Congress or the Senate in America. If it's an important bill, if it's a small bill like sheep have got to have, if you're having a lamb burger, most of the lamb you eat, the lambs have little rubber rings put round their balls that gradually castrate them. Most vegans would call that the most evil treatment in history. It's actually painless. But let's say a bill was going through. Okay, we're going to outlaw doing that, and we're going back to the old system of just a quick chop off. That would require only a 50. That's a 50-50 vote in the American chambers. But if it's something more serious, more of greater import constitutionally to the people, it's a bigger change that will affect more people more dramatically. Even in America, it's like it's got to be 60-40. In other words, you've got to have 60% of the whichever house you need to definitely get a bill through. I mean, Brexit was a joke. That should have been 60-40, as almost all other European countries would have had it for a major treaty change. It was a rumbled through, back of a fag packet, almost last minute, silly thing. Never mind we were lied to, the big boss, etc., etc. I mean, that's whatever. But I personally, I don't accept Brexit for a much more fundamental reason that you're Jonathan Pies and people like that. And I mean, to think today they announced that Ellie Chounds is going to be there as the next Green Party or joint leader of the Green Party. I lived in that region for years. Not one Green, not one lefty, not one Liberal even, did any work to actually harvest pro-Brexit votes, pro-EU votes, and much more importantly, as then the next couple of years carried forward, did any work to organise groups in villages and village halls, all of which had been paid for by the European Union in the whole region I used to live in. How about some letter writing? How about we write to our MPs? How about we flesh out some important facts that didn't even get onto the bloody into the public domain when we had the 2016 vote, and help focusing our MPs on a more intelligent debate if there were going to be something in the future. which there basically was, sort of in 2017 and a bit more in 2019. Not one green lefty did anything, and I lived actually among 5 constituencies. So that's the real complaint I've got about Brexit. Those who are on the side of the work one has to do to talk about any major political change, they did nothing. I mean, they should have all been deported to fucking El Salvador and the key thrown away, and try and find some people who actually could speak in a real way about the real things. I invented a loan myself. Excuse me, Europe is modern. Now the people, I'm not keen on technology. Technology's done a huge amount of damage. But the British people love modernity. They love modern. Europe is, and always was, modern. They couldn't even manage to stop and think, what might be a good word that might reach not just the dreadful Guardian reading, well, they're not elite, they're a weird tribe off in planet Zog, but the ordinary people and the not so keen on European food people, bloody foreign food people, they like modern too. They've all got the most modern, great big fat fucking flat screen televisions, even when they're on the dole or on the disability for years and years. Right, try and keep to the point. Right, so Europe. I am so 100% for open borders. Now, I care about one or two other things as well. The environment especially, and I care about a more egalitarian society where we have, without a doubt, the highest rents relative to... What's that sheep eating? Oh, it's a salt lick. To median income. But particularly for, I mean, you almost have to take the top 10% out of the equation. Forget about them. You should have different stats for them almost. So the 90% who are on either benefits, sick, very low income, for whatever reason, or ordinary working class or lower middle class wage, relative to the wage, relative to the median wage of the 90% who are not the slaves of the oligarch 1%. Because the oligarch 1% need their 5% or so, almost 10%, to be their estate agents, the Audi dealers, all those kind of people. So basically in Britain you have a more or less a 10% who get well over the median wage for one reason or other, and then the 90%. So if you take the median wage of the 90%, which, by the way, this does not exist in Europe anything like to the extent of Britain, this income disparity between the top 5%, let's say, and the bottom, it doesn't exist in Europe. It's nothing like as high. It's Britain and America we're in a league of our own. So you've almost got to take out those people and the ordinary 90% median wage compared to the average property rental property prices, which carry on going up. The latest figures is they're still going up. Despite the fact that the amount of people that are on the list to rent has gone down. That's the definition of the greediest fucking rentier fat cat no society probably in the world. Anyway, we've gone mad. Go back to the point. What was the point? The point is this. So, in every way, I personally happen to be against any restrictions at borders. Within reason. I'm not stupid. If the borders were open all the way between here and I've kind of I almost went to live in Mogadishu. Yeah, there are countries where it's gone so to shit that millions are going to come, and you can't have that. I know that. I'm not stupid. It wouldn't be good for them either. And furthermore, my real problem with the open border, any open borders, is all of these poor people that have been conned from their television that Britain is this land of milk and honey, when it's become so unpleasant, so mad. Our mental health figures are 7 or 8 times worse than the European average, and that's real. That's not data manipulation. That's not tricks, loopholes in the measurements. Now, that's real. I have spent a year speaking with many European parents and British parents, and they all agree on that. Anyway, to try and get to the point. So yeah, for me, the most important humanitarian reason for closing the borders is to protect, actually, potential immigrants. I'm sorry, a family today being smashed to bits by Israeli bombs in Gaza are still going to have more solidarity, genuine togetherness and sharing than any family in this country. To the point. Right, let's try and make this. I was going to try and do this in 3 minutes. It's turned into 15 minutes of waffle. If you actually care about this society, things like environmentalism, our nature is far more depleted than anywhere else in Europe, and I'm quite sure our watercourses, our air, our food chain. Oh, England's green and pleasant land. It seems to be pretty accepted now that there is microplastic going into the food chain at massively increasing degrees over and above what it was 10 or 20 years ago. Of course, we're not alone in the world on that, but we need to be alone setting an example as to how on earth we're going to change things. So, here's the thing. There are a couple of reasons, but let's start with the actual real one first. We need our politicians to be focused on basically 3 terribly important, they're more than terribly important, they're fundamental things. A, the environment, B, more egalitarian society, and I'm not going to add in mental health, which is a massive problem, because if you have a more egalitarian society, more balance, all of the history, in fact all of history shows that mental health follows. Mental health improves when you have a more egalitarian, thoughtful, coherent, cohesive society. What's the other one? Oh, there's 1 or 2 others. We're much more involved in all of your forever wars than most of the people in this country understand. We need to be dealing with those things. And they're all massive. They're truly massive. Somehow reaching people. Only a couple of percent have been reached. Somehow reaching people. I mean, just walking around here in the last 2 months, it's basically rained about 2 or 3 days in 2 months. So many incomers. Guy that went past, walking around in new wellies. Now, wellies, I think you'll find, put more man-made material from clothing into the environment than anything else. If you're walking up the roads, they rub off quickly, especially if they're Dunlops. My, the soles wear through quickly, which gets left on the roadways. Never mind, unless you use Stormshore. Stormshore can't improve, it can't fix the soles, but your average pair of wellies is only going to last 2 or 3 years. I don't think they're recyclable, and they'll usually perish after 4 or 5 years anyway. So wellies are one of the number one net environmentally negative items of clothing. Yet I can't believe it. As soon as you get a little bit, no, actually, in days, all last week before, wandering around the countryside, there's no water. It's actually virtually a drought. Your townies are walking around in wellies. It's just, hasn't anything reached anybody? No, it hasn't. It's reached the reality of the environment that we have to so cut back on all unnecessary man-made or even natural molecules that pass through our domain at any one time has only got through to about 1%. So it's a massive job. How if you put all the government people in the whole damn country on this, how on earth is this messaging going to be adjusted, changed? I bet you would still take years. Blah blah blah. Egalitarianism, etc., etc. Now here's the thing. It seems pretty clear that any political party now, and nothing's going to change in Britain for a decade, we are so stuck with the same, because the rhetoric of all the people at the top, and that includes especially media, that includes especially Stuart Lee, all of these kinds of people have got nothing to say. All they can do is be smug and say things they think are going to please the herd. And the worst of the lot are those who, like Jonathan Pye and Stuart Lee, every other word is, you're all divided, you're all, when they are just as much part of the problem because they have nothing useful to say ever. So they're not going to change anything. I'm very much surprised, be very surprised there's going to be any kind of new grassroots younger group coming through, because in many ways they are much more immature than the generation before, and it's not their fault. They've been held there. They've been rabbit in the headlights for years, and the parents who speak with me honestly say so. Anyway, to the point, right. I know for a fact that no political party in Britain is going to ever, or rather for the next decade, grab a majority of the electorate if they say, we'll carry on at, I mean, even I was quite surprised actually to hear that it's still 720,000 net migration, inward migration per year. No political party is conceivably going to get a majority the way Britain is by furthering that. So the absurd narcissism. I mean, if I went to America and happened to have an indeterminate sentence, and I'd done something, maybe I'd used a false passport. I wish I could get one, okay, which is a serious criminal offence. I would be sent back to to a system adjudged to be entirely against human rights. I'd be sent back to a country which the government don't even today try to deflect, has committed what even the BBC called war crimes. Excuse me, now, any half aware German, French, Spanish, Portuguese knows this. They research us, they know this, you know. And yet you're fucking smug Stuart Lee. If I overstayed in America by a day, they don't mess around. You don't get any special treatment being a limey. I know, because I've been slightly in that situation. They're bloody lethal. They love it. So, this one in your address book. Who's she then? They're absolute They waterboard you, virtually. And this is 35 years ago. Right to the point. Any Green, any lefty, any Liberal Democrat who's sitting there saying, oh, no, we've got to debate this immigration thing. What are they actually doing? I mean, it's over. Immigration, I'm talking about for the last 500 years, has just been an ebb and flow. It's a game. It's the fantastic half-breed black man who used to lie. A fucking liar. Number one liar. He told us all for years he was half Pakistani, when in actual fact he was half Punjabi. He was the ultimate cheeky Charlie. Within 50 years of his, 60 years of his father arriving here, he is the most superb mind. Like me, he raised himself. No, he is the most superb mind I've met. Philosopher. Raised himself on the words of Bob Dylan. We were at the same black bush. We didn't know each other then. There to see a thoughtful poet. Number 2 on the bill, the magnificent, greatest ever British female writer, Joan Armatrading. First generation, whatever immigrant, irrelevant. For whatever reason, the shutters are open for a few years or a few decades, and there is no question about it. It's got nothing to do with some mad Axel bloke. The shutters are going down again. There is no question. You can argue all you want about cheap labour is required to wipe people's bottoms in old people's homes. Now, I accepted this 5 years ago. There is no way any party in Britain, any person in power is going to, for the rest of my lifetime, I would guess, unless there's a proper bloody pandemic and half the population gets wiped out, which I don't want. I wouldn't wish even my worst enemy a bad cold. There is no way that the British population is going to vote for an increase or even a sustaining of immigration at this level. And the worst thing that's going to that could possibly happen, which is going to happen, unless the Greens, the smug Stuarts, the fucking wanker Jonathan Pies, the lot of them shut up, is we're now going to have 3 or 4 years of all the political energy that should be on the environment. I mean, Nigel Farage should have nothing to do with any kind of power ever, because all his people are so beery. What do they call them? They're beery masters of the universe. That's why they joined his party, because they believe that Farage and Tice are like that when they're not. They're shabby. They're shabby. I've known the proper masters of the universe. Farage, Tyson, Ehrenbanks. They're the shabbiest. I actually feel sorry for them. They're so shabby. They've made a few million, got themselves a helicopter. They're so, Anyway. Petrol heads, yes. Virtually by definition, you're a petrol head joining the Reform Party. And petrol heads, they don't understand the environment. They never will. They don't care. Nor do they understand egalitarianism. They never will. They don't care. Most of them will be property owners, or they would be aspiring rentier economy participants. I mean, in one sentence, the actual, real politics, or just administering of our society that should happen in Britain, is now going to be once again, for another 5 years. I mean, it's the perfect excuse. The perfect excuse for every Green and lefty is Farage is coming, or rather is what did they get, 35% or something, 33% in the local elections. Yeah, Farage is coming. We're going to have to fight. We're going to have to come up with the perfect lines on immigration, blah, 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 blah. This horrible man and his horrible cohort. You see, the other thing about Britain, I know. You see, I've been writing today. I mean, I used to live in a county which all a lot from Kew and whatever. They stole money from wherever they stole money down south. The ones who are a bit too old. Well, no, they're a bit too old to even know what the word Trustafarian means, but that's all they are. Trustafarians. Old bag Trustafarians came and bought everything in the marches. But nobody told them it's where the SAS are. Most horrible people. Mad, half of them. Oh, we're traumatised. They're fucking psychos. Okay? Quite a lot of them down here as well. Yeah, today, what did we have? SAS, SBS. Now, I wrote things on my blog today, and if I were back in Herefordshire, I could get actually killed for that. It's not a joke, because they're so ignorant. You can't say this. Excuse me. It's in reports which have not been denied by the government. You're saying that me and my mates are fucking genocidal war criminals, you know, and you get badly hurt. Britain isn't some lovely, sweet place. I mean, in some ways, Britain's not that different from quite a few of your supposedly incredibly oppressive Arab states. That's of no interest to me. But let's keep to the point, which is we need to keep our societal, what's known as your community capital, which means most people don't have much spare time. We need to keep that time. I mean, the reality is, I would wander around after 2016 for a few years talking in regions like this, where there were hardly any black people at all. Almost all your lovely farmers. I met many farmers at their gates. Almost all of them. First thing they would say is, yeah, Brexit, it'll keep the blacks out. Worse though, 2020. Now I have a fantastic chronicle. Virtually every such bigot that I met, but they're not bigots. According to the rest of the community, they're the kind of quite nice people that are on the councils, and well, they might join Reform if... But anyway, virtually every single one of these middle-aged blokes who own the land, own the property, have you met them? And I'm serious. Actually, yes, virtually every single one. It's the blacks that have spread it. I'm serious. Including councillors in the local town councils. And I said council-ors, several. Middle-aged, actually, 60, 70-year-old blokes who are meant to be good burghers in the community. We are a subtly racist country, and you have to accept that the shutters have to go down. I entirely accept. Very hard to do, to bring it down to pretty much zero, but even I accept. Yeah, it's compared to other countries, relative to other countries, non-EU countries, there's been a massive increase in those coming into Britain. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I accept it relative to as it is in other countries, especially non-EU countries, but also EU countries which don't attract a lot of inward movement because they're cold. Places like, well, there are various Scandinavian regions, if not the whole country, where most people from the brown lands are going to be no thank you. Blah blah blah. There are other places, of course, which are already quite poor, or which are still relatively poor. Places like Bulgaria, etc. Most emigration, is for economic reasons. I accept that 100%, and I'm the ultimate. I am more Corbynite than Corbyn. I accept that 100%. Almost impossible to find in an economically viable way those who are genuinely fleeing genuine torture and tyranny. But I accept something more than that. That the people, at least half of them, probably closer to 75%, have just decided that's enough. And yet, your left, your Greens are still going to... They're the baddies here, you see. Anyone with a brain accepted this 5 years ago. Your lefties, your Greens, are going to now make it a political football. When, really, I think more than ever in my whole lifetime, I remember the wonderful 3-day week and blackouts of the 70s. More than ever in my lifetime, we actually do need to deal with the environment, the egalitarianism that's driven the number one cause of the massive increase in depression, anxiety, psychosis, well, it's all just neurosis really, that hurts people, that is genuine. The number one cause of that is that nearly half the country are only ever on a 2-month contract. You basically cannot fight an eviction, and evictions are still happening. Despite government waffle about we're changing the rules, bullshit. Evictions are still happening, and whether or not it's 2 months or 4 months doesn't make any difference. You are so precarious. It is so hard to rent somewhere else. And that causes such underlying mental ill health for those unlike me who haven't just accepted. Quite happily, I shall be ruthless forever. I don't care. I don't want to participate in this gross system, and I don't blame the system. I blame the people who allow it to continue. End of. Horribly long. Oh shit, 52 minutes.